Hi, how are you? This is Krishana. So I've had a lot of people ask me about my mediumship services, and I it's hard because so for example, my mom's a therapist, and I don't really like talking about the sessions that I have with people, um, with other people. I just don't like doing that. It just feels like an invasion of privacy, because what's happening within our sessions is so intimate. But I will tell you a story that has nothing to do with the client. It has to do with a haunted place, actually. So I used to live in Los Angeles, and there is a place in Los Angeles County, specifically Long Beach, called the Queen Mary. And one of my friends was super obsessed with the Queen Mary. And so one day we decide that we're going to go and take a trip, go to the bar, hang out, have some drinks, and then just explore the ship. So what ends up happening is I go, we're having a nice time. And then my friend is like, hey, let's go. It's nighttime. It's a little bit spooky. Like, nobody's around really, because I guess it's kind of like off season. So nobody's really around. And so let's go explore the ship. So the way that my mediumship happens, sometimes there's no tailor fit. It's almost like feeling like you live in the astral world, and then sometimes feeling like you live in the physical world. But in those particular situations, I get this thing that comes over me that makes me feel almost high. We hadn't been drinking that much, and I'm feeling just completely disassociated, just kind of like I'm in this haze and I can't really explain it. And that's often what happens during my mediumship readings, which is sort of this haze that kind of comes over me. You can call it channeling, for definitive purposes. Sidebar: when you're somebody who, when you are somebody who does this work, you've been doing it for such a long time that you don't really have names for it, but you're kind of going with the names that everybody else has kind of put in there. So you're like, oh, channeling. That sounds like right, correct, but I don't have a name for it. I've been doing it forever. So anyway, so what happens is we go into the ballroom. We go into the ballroom and we're sitting there. And I mean, my friend, when I say obsessed with this ship, obsessed. He knows everything about this ship. And so I trust his word, because I'm just kind of like, you know everything about this ship. I know nothing. And so we're in the ballroom and nobody's there. It's just us. We kind of snuck in. And all of a sudden I get this sort of like sway feeling. And then I start dancing in circles around the ballroom. And I felt like a little girl. I felt like I was the little girl. I felt like I was a little girl who was dancing in the ballroom, just kind of like twirling and playing, but very playful energy. And my friend was like, what's going on? And I was like, yeah, I just feel like I want to just like dance in circles around this ballroom. I feel kind of like a little girl. My impression that I got was this little girl with blonde hair, long blonde hair, who's just kind of like, dancing, playing, really nothing malicious at that point. And so my friend was like, that's kind of spooky. He's like, because there is actually a little girl who is seen in this ballroom. And so, things like that happen. So we continue to explore the ship and go around, and I'm just getting these impressions of people that watch us, people that are, that were there at some point, and what their thoughts are sort of in these particular moments. And that's generally speaking, like I said, there's no custom fit to how it works. It's just whatever impressions want to present themselves are presenting themselves. I call them impressions because, sometimes they're happening in a certain time and certain space that we're not currently in. They're not happening in 2022 or, whenever this situation was, which I think it was like 10 years ago, I want to say. They're happening sometimes, in the 1920s, or they're happening in the 1950s, or it's happening 2 weeks ago or whatever. So generally that's kind of how it works. I pick up impressions that are of things that are happening, and it's kind of whatever comes to me. Yeah. So as far as booking a mediumship reading with me and how that goes, it's hard for me to answer that question because, a good example is I did have a mediumship reading at some point. I'm trying to keep my anonymity. I'm trying to keep the anonymity of the session without, giving too much away. But I guess I can kind of, in a general sense, say, I went to a certain place in the world that I had never been before. And I was introduced to the customs of that place, psychically. And realize also how they saw energies like mine. And they weren't very forthcoming. That happens sometimes. They weren't very forthcoming. They didn't want to speak because I am, I kind of fit differently within their sort of cultural system. So that happens sometimes. Also, I get names of people sometimes. That happens as well. I get names, I get impressions. There was another mediumship session that I did with somebody, and I could see this person in the afterlife. I am also really good with if I have to move people on, or they're in a space where they're stuck, and I have permission. I do try to move them on. So this isn't just kind of for entertainment purposes or just, to say that we're cool. This is really kind of this thing about kind of doing the work. Sometimes also, there may be lost objects, and I can kind of pick up on, these lost objects or these things that people are supposed to find. That has happened in medium sessions before. So I just kind of wanted to kind of give you guys this little story time and tell you guys about how the mediumship works. So if you'd like a mediumship reading, then go ahead and hit me up.